Hello and welcome across the nation to everyone joining us across the nation for today's workshop on how to follow an intake process using CASAS e-tests online. This workshop focuses on implementing an intake process to incorporate the use of beginning literacy reading Form 27, Level A forms, and the standard locator or appraisal plus pretest session by following a recommended intake process. A certified coordinator creates intake sessions, and a certified proctor conducts intake in combination with managing sessions. This is one of 23 complementary CASAS online implementation workshops. You are not expected to attend all 23 workshops as indicated by the Citrix online system. This is a training room set up to conduct all 23 workshops. We highly recommend attending as many as possible to learn about best practices, ask questions, and to become confident in using the online system. Online help documentation is available on our website under Training and Support, eTest Help Documentation, and TOPS Pro Enterprise Help Documentation. You will want to be sure and bookmark these as your electronic go-to resources, particularly the CASAS e-Test Online Guide, which provides information covered in these workshops. Today's workshop will cover Appendix G in the CASAS e-Test Online Guide. Now let's just increase this for your viewing ease. Let's go ahead and scroll down here. Titled CASAS Intake Process. This appendix includes guidelines for an ABE and ESL intake process. We also have a standalone intake process document in the CASAS e-Test Help Documentation Training Materials Library under the topic of intake resources. You will see several intake resources here listed, and there is the CASAS intake process in a separate pull-out document. Here, let's just decrease this a little bit. There, okay? All right. However, I'm going to use the guide. Let's see, let's make sure that I'm back on the guide. Here we go. And to Appendix G here. Before we get started, I would like to point out where you will find access to CASAS e-Test Online and TOPS Pro Enterprise Online. From a web browser using either Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, or Google Chrome web browsers, you can access CASAS e-Test Online by entering the main domain name of etestsonline.org. This is the main domain name address you will use when your agency is set up with an online database. This commonly is referred to as the production server, where live data is produced. There is a direct link to TOPS Pro Enterprise in the upper left corner, and anything that has to do with accessing CASAS e-Test is front and center on your screen. For today's workshop, we will be using a simulation server. This is identical to the production server. The simulation server is available to anyone wanting to experiment and explore with our online system without risk of compromising live data. You will find information on how to access the simulation server on our website under eTest Help Documentation, the Getting Started category, and there is the simulation server document here. Any questions, folks, before we move on into today's workshop? I would encourage you to ask questions along the way. If you are joining us from a device that allows you or that has a built-in microphone, please feel free to project your voices into the meeting room. If you are not equipped with a microphone, then please feel free to enter any questions in the chat box. I do not see questions throughout the workshop as interruptions. I see those as opportunities to bring clarification and added information to what I am, the information that I'm sharing, as well as what I am demonstrating on the screen. So please don't be shy. Ask your questions. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, I'm going to start on the simulation server. The simulation server, folks, by the way, uses the same main domain name address with the exception of Rolling Hills added, and it's important to have the final slash after Rolling Hills. This will get you directly to the simulation server. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And let's see, I think I'm going to go ahead and, well, first I'm going to sign in as a coordinator so that I can show you briefly the configuration of the testing sessions. As you will see listed here, there are 3 types of intake sessions. As mentioned at the beginning of this workshop, the intake process incorporates using Form 27. This is a reading form. Level A, in this sense for an ABE program, would be Level A forms for reading and math. And then the standard intake combining a locator plus pretest or an appraisal plus pretest combined. There are like intake sessions also configured for ESL. The beginning literacy only has the reading form available, so there is not a beginning literacy listening. The intake process in this sense would administer a reading and listening, and then the standard ESL intake process of a reading and listening locator plus pretest followed by a pretest. For today's demonstration, I'm going to demonstrate using the ABE program. Now, these 3 types of intake sessions allows new student records to be added at the time of testing and aligns with the recommended CASAS intake process to ensure accurate and favorable test results. Place learners at an instructional level according to the lower of the 2 pretest scores. In this case, it is with regards to Form 27, you would actually only be placing according to the 1 pretest score. With Level A sessions and locator plus pretest sessions, it would be the lower of the 2 pretest scores. There is, let's pop back over just real quick to the intake resources section. There is an NRS levels and grade levels for WIA Title I programs, so you may want to take the time to review this. You have the NRS EFLs listed on the far left, the ABE instructional levels, as well as the ESL instructional levels, the CASAS scaled score ranges per level, and the corresponding grade levels. Now this is for reference of WIA I title funded title programs. We also have a CASAS and NRS levels for WIA Title II funded programs. These tables actually are slightly different. These are generally not correlated to grade levels. However, they're very similar. Now the EFLs are slightly different. Or they do cross over if you compare this side by side with WIA Title I. So knowing your funding source will direct you to the appropriate chart, which in turn allows you to determine appropriate program or placement within your programs. Okay. Notice that there are different levels, well, with regards to the ABE forms, reading and math, scale score ranges are identical. However, the reading and listening scale score ranges for ESL, EFL, or ELL programs differs slightly, so please be mindful of that. These reflect the NRS-approved assessments, so that with regard to listening, that would be the 980 series for an ESL program, whereas it would be the life skills math for an ABE program. I think listening for the ESL program, I think I might have mistakenly said ABE. Okay, now let's pop back over to these sessions here. Now, just to put a plug in for the next workshop following today is on the registration process. And if you use these registration sessions, which I will demonstrate in the next workshop, then the data collection screens are skipped when students are participating in one of the intake sessions. If you do not use a registration session, then learners will complete registration or data collection screens during the intake process before they begin testing. So this is optional to you folks, and we'll discuss the concept of using CASAS Online as a registration system in the next workshop. But for today, we'll adhere to discussing about the intake process specifically. Now, just as a brief overview of the intake process, this document, folks, is highly recommended, or the concept of conducting or establishing an intake process is highly recommended. So it is definitely worth reading through this document in its entirety. We talked briefly about the intake process, and it truly is your opportunity to welcome students to your program and to determine their needs and skill levels and so forth. With an effective intake process and orientation process, you will create a learning environment that works with each of these factors. Engage your students at the beginning, and you are more likely to have higher retention and completion rates. Now let me just look at, there is an initial screening process that goes on with both ABE and the recommended ABE and ESL intake process. And there is a response sheet on page 176. So I'm actually going to pop over to page 176 for just a moment here, and then I'll go back up. So forgive me for streaming these screens by here for you. This is an oral and writing screening response sheet. And this may be used as for screening to identify learners who cannot read or write at all in English. Any learners that have difficulty completing the first few fields, such as the date and their name, they can generally be assessed using the CASAS Beginning Literacy Reading Assessment Form 27 to further refine their placement and to determine their baseline reading level. The oral screening can also be used to check their basic conversational abilities. The oral screening is primarily used for ESL, ELL, or programs, whereas the writing screening can be used for ESL. However, it's most often, I would say, used for ABE programs, but it is available for you to use in both programs. Now let me just pop back up here real quick. And again, sorry for these streaming screens, but I just wanted to point out a few important aspects of this document here. So it talks about the oral screening process, administration directions here. The oral screening does follow a rubric of 0 through 2. There is a oral screening script. The first question is always, what is your name? However, this is a non-scored question. And then you have 6 standard questions that should always be asked exactly as you see them here. What country are you from? How long have you been in the United States? And so forth. Here are examples of responses. There are also examples, oral screening samples per score. So here's examples of a score 1, scores 2, or 1 and 2. Okay, so please review that so that that will guide you in appropriate scoring of the oral screening. Now here, the writing screening. Also, let me increase this here. There are 2 sentences dictated, and they should be dictated exactly as you see here. The writing screening also follows a scoring rubric of 0 through 2. And here's a writing sample scoring practice worksheet. So go do yourself a favor, go through this, put your what you believe would be the score before you take a look at what the actual scoring of those writing samples is. Okay? Now, interpreting your results, you would want to be sure and use, and I'm going to, it's included in this document, but for just a quick reference, I just want to pop over to the scale score descriptors. So we have ABE, excuse me, let's see, where it's okay, ESL skill level descriptors here. According to the scale score range, based on the lower of the 2 pretest scores, this would be a descriptor of the basic skills for that student at that given level. There's also one for ABE. Here it is, the ABE skill level descriptors. So they are different per instructional program. Okay, so you'll definitely want to reference those sheets there. Okay, let's go back to the intake process here. So appropriate program placement based on the scale score and the scale score descriptors. Be sure to be mindful of testing accommodations. Sessions can be, an accommodations session can be added to your list of available sessions called accommodations if students need, say, time and a half, or accommodations such as the largest screen display from the very beginning when they first launch into the application, then we can add those types of sessions for you. Now here briefly here again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, folks, because I really do want to actually demonstrate live for you on how to use those 3 intake sessions. For the ABE intake process, basically observing how well the student fills out forms. You can either use your own registration form or the scoring response sheet, just through observation, and you can then administer the writing screening or any other writing assessment. Here again, consider the number of years of formal schooling for ABE students and any other factors affecting level placement. Now here, if the student has difficulty writing their name and address and in completing the writing sample, then follow step 2A. So this is the heart of the intake process. And let me just increase this here. So following 2A, you skip the locator or appraisal process and you administer the first 5 there are only 5, the 5 practice items from Form 27. This is one-on-one. If the student has some difficulty answering those 5 practice items, you allow them to continue taking the Form 27 as their pretest and place accordingly. If the student has little or no difficulty with those 5 practice items, then abort any further administration of Form 27 and direct the student into Level A reading and math. Here again, in both cases, you are bypassing the locator because in this case it's not appropriate. If a student, if this describes the student that you are working with, then it is not appropriate to sit the student down to take the locator and pretest. It is most appropriate to follow these recommendations here in step 2A. Now, if the student doesn't fit this example, their skills appear to be greater than what is described here, then follow the path of 2B, to where you administer the locator plus pretest, or if you have decided to use the appraisal in place of the locator, you certainly can do so, plus the pretest, or an appraisal alone. And we're going to talk about these types of differences once I get into the demonstration. Okay. Now here again, place the student based on the lower of the two pretest scores. And let's just pop over real quick to the ESL intake process. The ESL intake process is very similar to the ABE intake process. Again, just through observation, observe how the student communicates and fills out forms, consider their formal schooling, administer the oral screening. And the oral screening, as I showed, has 6 standard questions. If the student scores less than 6 on the oral screening, follow step 2A. And here again, it's the same process that I just described for the ABE program with Form 27. And in this case, level A, it is reading. However, the listening is administered to ESL students and not the math. Now, if the student falls within these scoring categories, and writing screening is optional. I would say the oral screening is important, especially for ESL or ELL programs. Writing screening, I would say is not as commonly used in ESL programs. However, if it is a student that you feel that might be in the advanced ESL, then you may very well want to include that in your determination of that student's basic skills or entering your program. Now, here again, if the student falls within this 2B category, then simply administer the locator or appraisal plus pretest and the appraisal, and then based on the lower of the 2 scores. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into the demonstration with the remaining time that we have here. Now, let's say, and I'll just display this here, and I'm going to use ESL today as my example. Let's say that you have an ESL student that scores less than 6 on the oral screening. So we're going to now administer Form 27. So, whoops, here. So I'm going to start, and actually I need to log out. I'm sorry. Before I do that, I just wanted to quickly, I'm sorry. Let's see. I'm trying to speed up some time here. We can view the configuration of the session after I started. Proctors cannot create or edit sessions. However, they can view the configuration of sessions. So I'm going to combine both viewing of the session and starting the session for you under the login of a proctor. So I'm going to start that intake session. Let's quickly view the configuration of that session. This will administer the Form 27. Now, oops, I just realized I started the ABE. Let's do the ESL intake. Folks, I'm going to pause for just a moment. I want to take it from the beginning here because I feel like I'm jumping around and I don't want to lose you here, okay? When it is time to proctor assessment, the proctor first launches their web browser, goes to the URL, signs in as the certified proctor. And let's say I'm conducting intake for the ESL program. So I'm going to simplify this list, and I'm going to filter it for contains ESL, and the description contains intake. Going to refresh my screen, and now I have my 3 intake sessions. I'm going to start all 3 because I don't know right offhand the levels of students coming in. So I want all sessions available. And by the way, don't forget to direct your proctors to actually select the maximum supervisory hours. For time's sake, I'm just leaving that as is for now. So I'm going to go ahead and start all of these 3 sessions. I'm preparing for testing. Okay, so I have the management console ready to go. I've activated these sessions. Now I would go about the room, click Administer Test on any registered testing station, run the executable file, it's a little bit slow here, folks. Okay, and I just realized I actually forgot. I am so sorry. Please forgive me, folks. I do need to divert for just one moment. Let's see. Give me 1 second, folks. In preparing for today's session, I actually forgot to disable the secure browser, because if I launch into the actual protected test content area, you won't be able to see my screen. So please forgive me, folks. We'll probably go over time for just a short bit, so I hope you can still stay with me. Now let's see. This is Rolling Hills. Okay, let's see. Okay, almost back with you, folks. Okay. All right. Forgive me for that snafu there. Let's go ahead and pick this back up where we left off. The proctor is activating these sessions to prepare for testing. By the way, folks, when you are using the application, CASAS e-test application, it is important to use the links contained in the application itself, because if you accidentally use your back browser button, that simultaneously logs you out of the application. So now going to the testing station, clicking Administer Test, running that executable file. Now we have a testing station ready for testing. Okay, so I'm going to pop back over to the proctor module here, and let's go ahead and view this session. Let's say that I've conducted the oral screening and the student scored less than 6 on the oral screening. I would go ahead and view the session activity for the Intake Form 27 session. I would identify the station at which I have seated the student. And just before we administer that test, I just simply want to show you the configuration that Form 27 will display on the screen. The listening will not display even the practice won't display because we've actually hidden the practice item, so that cancels it out. This session does include registration, as mentioned earlier. So if you are conducting a registration with the session, the student will be required to enter that information. Okay, now since we've activated the station, the station is automatically refreshed on its own. And I'm realizing I forgot to create my sample student. And so I'm going to just blitz through these screens and then review these screens in the next session. My apologies, folks. Okay, so we'll go quickly here. I'm just going to answer at random. So, but I think the more you see these screens, the more you'll begin to understand the process here. And here again, I'm just clicking randomly just to get through these screens. And I apologize, we will review these in the next session. Okay, so now we're going on to the test menu screen. And Form 27 button displays, so we'll launch into that. Standard directions as included with all test forms. And again, the toolbar displays, so the student can increase the screen display. I'll go ahead and do so for your viewing preference. And again, the toolbar can be unpinned if it proves to be distracting. Now, these are the practice items. Now, practice is suppressed on the simulation server, folks, so you have no idea what the display is. But let's just say the student is going through the practice. Now, the practice items, as with all standardized CASAS test forms, the practice items do tell the student if they answered incorrectly or if they answered correct or not. Okay, so here, for example, on this, I answered incorrectly twice, and then it tells you what the correct answer is. Okay. Form 27, so as I'm going through, let's say the student, here again, just observing how the student is responding to these test items. Okay, and there's just one more after this. Okay, now it's at this point that you want to decide based on that intake process here. Let me go back up real quick to, where's my guide here? Okay, if the student had some difficulty with those 5 practice items, let the student go ahead and begin that assessment. Okay, and take this Form 27 as their pretest. Okay, if the student has little or no difficulty on Form 27 on those 5 practice items, excuse me, you want to abort Form 27 and go to Level A. Okay, aborting can either be done directly on the screen itself. Let me demonstrate. I can use Control-E key command to not score the test, delete it. So I can do that from the testing station, which in this case I would recommend going ahead and doing because you are with the student anyway. So go ahead and abort that administration. Log out as that student, and back at the application management screen, you will see that the student is no longer logged in to this station on Form 27. We're going to, rather than move the student to another station, we're going to still use that same station and now add it to the Level A session. And now back at the station, you do not need to go all the way out or exit the application to rerun the executable file. You can actually allow that test delivery system to remain in the temporary memory on the machine. You'll just have a momentary blip in doing so. Let's see. If I enter this here, it'll say that the testing session state is invalid, which is true because we disconnected it from one session and added it to another session. So don't be alarmed by that message. I'm going to enter the same exact ID as I just used. The student will confirm their identity. And now the student is directed to Form 81R as well as 981L. There are no practice items displaying at the top of this menu, and the student bypasses the locator or appraisal process. Okay, so that's that screen there. Let me go ahead and log out. Oh, yeah, go ahead and log out here. Return the screen back. Now let's just go back over here to, notice here the student here was logged in. Now the student is no longer logged in. Let's say that that the student scored 6 or more on the oral screening. Then you would go directly to the intake session for the locator plus pretest or appraisal plus pretest. So we will remove the station from the intake level A, add it to the locator plus pretest. So folks, I hope you're getting the idea that you can use any testing station. It's simply a machine. It's a vanilla, it's a generic machine. It takes its direction on what and how tests are delivered from the configuration of that session. In this case, it's the locator plus pretest. The locator plus pretest session will administer just that in both the reading and listening. Form 102R is the computer adaptive locator for reading, and Form 89L is the computer-based test locator for listening. The student will have the option to skip questions on the computer adaptive locator. If you include registration with testing, the student will go through that information and so forth. So let's take a look at what this screen looks like here. Again, we had disconnected the station from one session and redirected it and added it to the other session, the locator plus pretest. So now in this instance, we are opting to display the practice, because keep in mind, when we were conducting the Form 27, say with the same student, the Form 27 at that level is done on a one-on-one basis. If the student has little or no difficulty, or some difficulty, excuse me, and you redirect them to a level A, you can consider already having gone through practice with the student. So if you noticed on the level A, on the Form 27 intake session as well as the Level A intake session, both of those we hid the practice tests. When you have a student that falls in the category of greater than 6 on the oral screening, you bypass, of course, Form 27 or Level A. You go directly to the locator or appraisal plus pretest. But keep in mind, this is a brand new student, so the student, this will be their first introduction to using CASAS e-test. So this is why we are opting and recommending to have the practice items or practice tests available. If you opt to not have the student go through the reading practice before going into the reading locator, that's fine. However, we do highly, highly recommend at least having students go through the Level A listening practice test before launching into listening. The reason being is that the listening tests auto-advance on the protected test content. The listening does not auto-advance on the practice items presented at each section of a listening test. CASAS listening tests are divided into 3 sections, and so it's important to understand how a CASAS web-based listening test is delivered. I would in fact recommend all of you to administer reading, math, and listening tests to yourselves so that you have first-hand experience on taking those, as well as going through the practice. I believe the listening practice tests all have 9 questions with samples before each section, and the reading has 6 practice test items. Okay, so this is just as a to recap, this is the locator, reading locator, that will lead directly into a reading pretest. This is the listening locator that will lead directly into a listening pretest. Okay. Once testing is completed for the day, the proctor should then click Manage. Well, first off, I'm sorry, I'll go back over here. Let's say the student completed those tests. When the student completes both whatever test buttons are available, if there's only 1 test button or 2 test buttons or 3 test buttons for reading, math, and listening, whatever the case may be, once each modality test is taken in this entire testing event, each button becomes disabled as the student completes each modality. When all 3 or all available modalities are completed, then the screen, it comes back to a test menu. I think that it doesn't say test menu. I'll have to bring up a screen display at another time, but it'll simply say goodbye, and then down somewhere in here it'll just have a log out button. Okay, so in this case we're going to go ahead and exit the application because we'll assume that testing is completed for the day. The proctor back at the application management should stop all of these sessions. Proctors should not leave sessions running because that risks a test being administered in a non-proctored environment. Once the proctor has stopped all of their sessions, testing is no longer active, then the proctor should be directed to log out of the application. Okay, so I apologize, folks, for the snafus getting us into today's demonstration. Next time around, I've taken notes to remind myself of these preparatory steps that I overlooked for this session. But thank you for your patience. Thank you for enduring through this session. Do you have any questions about following a recommended intake process? Okay. Well, with that, I would like to extend the invitation for you to return for the registering students session. We'll be returning in just a little over 15 minutes to demonstrate how to use the online system as a registration system. Okay, so thank you again, folks, for your participation, and we'll see you back in a few minutes.